Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. I want you to imagine this crazy scenario. This is Alabama quarterback Bryce Young, and if you know anything about college football, you know he's really good, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. He won the Heisman last year, led Alabama to the national championship game and an SEC title, and threw 47 touchdowns and just 7 interceptions, establishing himself as the number 1 quarterback in the conference by a fairly healthy margin. Now I want you to imagine if after that incredible 2021 season he had, if during the offseason, Bryce Young, who was still the starting quarterback for the Crimson Tide, went into Nick Saban's office and completely seriously, without any joking whatsoever, told Saban that he wanted to return punts this year as well. Aside from just playing quarterback, he wanted to be the team's punt returner. Now obviously, this idea seems crazy. Putting any starter as your punt returner is a risky situation, since they can get leveled, and once the ball touches them, they really get no protection whatsoever. If you muff a punt and you take a shot, or you find yourself at the bottom of a pile trying to recover that football, your chances of getting injured skyrocket. Plus, when you're running at full speed, and a defender in the opposite direction is also running at full speed, and you two collide, and you're not a defenseless player, so anything goes for the most part, yeah, you can see why coaches don't like playing their starters on special teams at punt returner, whether it's a wide receiver or a defensive back. But a quarterback? The QB? The field general himself, who's one of the best in the nation, is coming off of a great season where he led you to the title game, and is the player whose success you're most dependent on if you're going to do well this season? Yeah, that's absurd. I mean, we saw this in the NFL for one season with Joe Theismann, who is actually a pretty decent punt returner, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, that season, Theismann was a third stringer, who just wanted to get on the field however he could. He wasn't the starting quarterback, and there's a reason that when he moved up the depth chart and actually had a chance to get in there a quarterback and wasn't entirely relegated to the bench, that George Allen took him off of punt returning duties. It's way too risky. And that's what makes this story we're about to dive into all the more crazy. Because in 1990, the quarterback that led the Colorado Buffaloes to one of the best offenses in the nation and led them to a win in the Orange Bowl to finish as the number 1 team in the country was this man right here, Darian Hagan. Heck, he even got some Heisman votes that season, just like he did in 1989. And in 1991, he came back for his senior season, once again, serving as the team's starting quarterback. Except this time, he would also be on special teams as the punt returner. And the crazy part? He was actually really good. This is the story behind Darian Hagan, also known as the starting quarterback, who somehow served as his team's punt returner. Before I talk about how this experiment worked out, we need some context to understand, well, why the heck Colorado's starting quarterback was even returning punts in the first place, because it is so out of left field that on the surface by itself, it just seems hard to believe. The year is 1990, and Colorado, with a record of 11-1-1 and a win in the Orange Bowl over Notre Dame, has won the national championship, finishing number 1 in the AP poll. It's the first time that Colorado has ever finished the season as the number 1 team in the country, and to this day, remains the only national title by the Buffaloes. And while there were many reasons for the program's success that season, including a great season by running back Eric Bieniemy, who led the NCAA in yards from scrimmage and finished 3rd in the Heisman voting with 17 rushing touchdowns, a very good secondary led by Tim James, who led the Big 8 in interceptions, and a game against Missouri that they won 33-31 that was not even the slightest bit controversial, the man who played one of the biggest roles was the man you've been watching this whole time, Darian Hagan. Hagan was a true dual threat in every sense of the word. He could beat you with his arm, as he led the Big 8 in touchdown passes, and he could beat you with his leg, as the year before in 1989, he had over 1,000 rushing yards and 17 rushing touchdowns. Regardless of how he did it, he was going to beat you more often than not. Hagan was one of the most electrifying quarterbacks in the game at the time, And considering the fact that Colorado never lost a Big 8 game with him under center, and they went 28-5-2 with him as the starter over his career, it's not hard to see why he is held in incredibly high regard, and why he's a member of his school's Hall of Fame. However, for as great of a player as Hagan was, it was very apparent that when it came to his chances going forward of making it into the NFL, at least at quarterback, they were slim to none. There are some guys that make for great college quarterbacks, but everyone knows that they have no shot whatsoever at making it to the professional level, and Hagan was one of them. He was not exactly the most accurate passer in the world, as during that 1990 season, he completed just 46% of his passes. Good luck getting into the NFL at quarterback with a completion percentage that low. Seriously. For some perspective, I looked at every quarterback that got drafted in 1991 out of a Division 1A school, of which there were 11 of them. One of them was Pat O'Hara out of USC, who was chosen in the 10th round with pick number 260 by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I removed him from the dataset because he only threw 2 passes in 1990, and I wanted to look at quarterbacks that actually started, for obvious reasons. Here are all of their completion percentages in 1990, from Todd Marinovich at the top, with his completion percentage of 60.9%, to Paul Justin at the bottom, with his completion percentage of 51.8%. The median completion percentage is above 57%. And when we throw Darian Hagan into the mix with his abysmal 46% completion percentage by comparison, yeah, it doesn't exactly hold up. There's a reason why Mel Kiper Jr., in his draft analysis for Hagan, said it is obvious he's not a quarterback in the NFL. As a side note, if you want to learn more about Kiper and his draft evaluations, click the card in the upper right corner. With that, Hagan was looking ahead to his future. He wanted to make it in the NFL, and he obviously still wanted to play quarterback at Colorado because he was good at it at the college level, and there was no way that head coach Bill McCartney was going to remove him from that position. So he came up with an idea. What if, alongside playing quarterback, he also returned punts? Maybe he can't make it in the NFL as a quarterback, but if he could show off his skills as a punt returner, he might have a shot, and could show his value that way on special teams. Now I should note that this wasn't exactly the first time in his career that Hagan was returning punts, as this wasn't foreign territory for him. Even though he had never returned a punt before in the college game, he returned some punts in high school. But just the idea of having Hagan, the starting quarterback who just won a national championship, return punts seems insane. And at first, head coach Bill McCartney was not even the slightest bit on board with this idea for very obvious reasons. Keep in mind that on the final play of the first half in the Orange Bowl against Notre Dame, Hagan tore a tendon in his left knee and had to undergo surgery, and some people wondered if he was ever going to play again. It took 7 months of rehab for Hagan to just get back on the field, to the point where people didn't know if he was even going to be Colorado's starting quarterback in 1991. And now, on top of that, McCartney was supposed to let Hagan return punts? He was supposed to let Hagan play one of the most dangerous positions out there in an already dangerous game? Yes, Colorado lost their starting punt returner from 1990, Dave McClellan, after he led the entire NCAA in yards per return that season with 16.4. So they needed a new punt returner, so it's not like there wasn't an opening. But for it to be their quarterback? As McCartney said to Hagan, "Do you want me to get fired?" But with some convincing, Hagan was able to get McCartney on board. As McCartney said, "I said if he got hurt, people were going to call me the dumbest coach in America. Then I said, okay. He doesn't figure to be a quarterback professionally. I think he deserves a chance to show his skills at another position. If he proves he's the best punt returner we have, we'll take the risk of him being injured." As for what Hagan said on this, I felt in order for me to go to the next level, it wouldn't be at quarterback. I wanted to do something else that suits my talents. I returned punts in high school, so I know what it's all about. And as for the injury risk, well, Hagan wasn't concerned about that at all, saying, "The only way it's risky is if there's some dog out there trying to make a name for himself and he takes a cheap shot." Which I guess in theory is true about every single position on the field. You're one cheap shot away from getting injured. Hagan competed for the starting punt returner job, and successfully won it, which raises the final and the ultimate question. Just how good was he at returning punts? Was this incredibly bold and incredibly unconventional plan successful? Well, here's the crazy part. In 1991, you could make the legitimate argument, I kid you not, that Darian Hagan was the best punt returner in the entire Big 8 conference. When the season ended, Hagan, who had never returned a punt in college before this 1991 season started, had 25 punt returns for 287 yards. If you do the math, that comes out to an average of 11.5 yards per return. This ranked third in the entire conference and inside the top 20 in the entire NCAA. His 287 return yards ranked first in the conference, which made him just the fourth player in Colorado history to ever lead the Big 8 in this category, alongside JoJo Collins in 1985, Jeff Campbell in 1989, and the aforementioned Dave McCloughan in 1990. On top of that, the 287 punt return yards was, at the time, the 9th highest total in the history of the Big 8 Conference. So not only was he good by his standards, but he was historically good by the standards of the conference, which is saying a lot. And not only was Hagan good at this, but he was having fun while doing it. As Hagan said on returning punts, "It's fun. I know that at any time, I can put us in a good field position. I'm a couple blocks away from taking it back." And as it turns out, this bold strategy of having the starting quarterback return punts not only worked out from the team perspective, as Hagan didn't get hurt while doing this, and Hagan was awfully good at this to the point where he was helping out his team, but it worked from an individual perspective as well. He did this in an effort to get drafted and make it into the NFL. And sure enough, in the 9th round of the 1992 NFL Draft, with pick number 242, the San Francisco 49ers decided to take Darian Hagan due to his abilities on special teams. Who knows if he gets drafted if not for his ability as a punt returner. Now, Hagan never played it down in the NFL, and he bounced around a few teams in the Canadian Football League for a bit throughout the mid-1990s. But if the goal was to get drafted and use his special teams abilities to leverage a potential NFL career out of it, then mission clearly accomplished. Are we ever going to see anything like this again, where a starting quarterback on a championship team is the punt returner? Probably not. This was an absolutely unique circumstance that a coach would get absolutely criticized for if he tried attempting it today. Heck, McCartney was criticized a ton at the time for letting this happen in 1991. So imagine what the reaction would be today in 2022, more than 30 years later, with a generation of fans that is not even the slightest bit accustomed to seeing starters play on special teams due to the injury risk that it presents. Remember back then, you had guys like Danny White and Steve Spurrier who played both ways. You didn't have that anymore today. But in 1991, to great success, that's exactly what happened with Darian Hagan and Colorado. Most people today remember Darian Hagan as a heck of a quarterback who was one of the greatest players that Colorado has ever produced. They don't remember his contributions as a punt returner. Heck, as of this video, his Wikipedia page doesn't even mention anything about him being a punt returner for the Buffaloes. But when you combine his punt returning abilities with his passing abilities, and of course, his running abilities, Darian Hagan was a true triple threat. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.